Welcome to Defending Our Children with host Craig Sawman Sawyer, former Navy SEAL and federal agent, and Executive Director Forrest Seeley, both of Veterans for Child Rescue, an NGO actively engaged in the fight against child trafficking. Defending Our Children is the show that empowers the people with the information you need to know.
Every day in America, children are trafficked for sex. In schools, shopping malls, truck stops, clubs, and bars. Think it can't happen in your neighborhood? Think again. If you suspect a child is being trafficked for sex, call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center 24-hour hotline at 1-888-3737-888.
Welcome, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We have a guest for you today I know that you're going to learn from and be empowered by. Her name is Dr. Rima Laibow. She runs Prevent Genocide 2030. There's a lot of scientific evidence there that you're going to want to be aware of. Doctor, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for taking the time to share with us what you've learned in your journey. And I would ask everybody, or I would ask you to just unpack a little bit more of your background,
Sure.
How you would have people know that you arrived at the spot on your journey that you are today. What kind of led you there, and what is it that you really are revealing for everybody to understand?
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I am an MD. I was graduated from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in 1970, which I'm happy to say is still within living memory. On my very first day of medical school, much to my surprise, I was informed by a very famous pharmacologist in the first lecture of the first day of the medical school training that all pharmaceuticals work by poisoning enzyme systems. And if you like the results, you call it a therapeutic benefit. If you don't, you call it a side effect. But in fact, there are only side effects of pharmaceutical poisoning. And I said, I will never do that to a patient. I will find other ways. So from my very first moment as an aspiring physician, and through the 55 years since my graduation from medical school, I have never prescribed a pharmaceutical. Now, that's a little unusual for a physician, and it's almost unheard of for a psychiatrist. My postgraduate training was in adult psychiatry, and then my residency, my fellowship specialization beyond that was in child adolescent psychiatry. So I have a lot of years of history of practicing non-pharmaceutical medicine. But I also have another history that's equally important, and that is I do not sit idly by when I am touched by injustice, either for myself or someone else. So I've been involved in political justice activism for a long time, since I was 12, and I'm 81 now. You can do the math. It's a long time. And I've been kicked out of organization after organization for raising my hand and saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. That's another story. But I have been fighting for justice and for freedom to own one's own body, informed consent, mental freedom, cognitive freedom, emotional freedom, in many ways for many, many years. Well, in about 2000, late 2002, early 2003, a patient came to see me who was a head of state. By that time, my practice, since it was non-pharmaceutical, I was actually able to cure people, not just suppress symptoms, which is what allopathic medicine or conventional medicine is really about. Patients think it's about cure. People who are practicing allopathic medicine know it's about suppressing symptoms and using more drugs. And I wasn't doing that, so my patients actually were getting cured of whatever. And my practice had expanded from psychiatry and neurology, which is what I was trained in, to basically cataclysmic primary care, people who are desperate, who had, as the saying goes, failed therapy. And that is
Right.
the official phrase, people who had failed therapy in all kinds of things, incurable, intractable, terrible situations, come to doctors like me as kind of a doctor of last resort. And my patients were getting cured. Well, one of those patients was a head of state and a woman who wears a crown at state dinners. And one day she just cheerfully said to me, "You know, it's almost time for the great culling." And I said, "What?" And she said, "The culling, Culli." I said, "I know what the word is. What are you talking about?" She said, "The culling of the useless eaters," which at that point was a term that I had never heard. I said, "What's a useless eater?" She said, "Not what, who." I said, "Okay, who's a useless eater?" And she said, "Those people who are consuming our non-renewable resources." And I said, "Did it ever occur to you that you're consuming their non-renewable resources?" And she said, "Oh, that's interesting," and dismissed that. And I said, "So how many of these useless eaters are you planning on culling?" And she said, 90%. And I said, 90% of what? And she said, the total world population. Well, there was a little more discussion, and I've talked about that in other fora. And she left, and I thought, if this woman is crazy, or she's just given me a great clue that I need to pursue. Well, the answer is both. Yes, she was crazy because she was raised to be a psychopath, and she was a psychopath, and psychopaths are crazy. And she also turned me on to a path of inquiry that led me eventually, by early 2004, to close my practice of medicine. And with my husband, Major General Albert N. Stubblebine III, now deceased through assassination, um, 8 years ago, just a few days ago was the anniversary. We created the Natural Solutions Foundation, and the Natural Solutions Foundation is a health freedom organization. Health freedom, ownership of your own body, is your first and most essential freedom. Every other freedom comes from that. Take that away, fuse the corporation and the state, which says they own your body, then you are a slave. You are a slave because a slave cannot decide what happens to his or her own body or his
Right.
or her own children. Turns out there's a war on all of us. And one of the vectors of that war, one of the targets of that war, is our children and the very nature, the very existence of childhood. And that war is being waged. Yes, you want me to stop?
I don't want you to stop, and I don't want to disrupt you, but I have 100 questions already. You've hit on some very, very important points that are very familiar to you and probably not very familiar to our audience. So I want to, first thought I had was, man, what is it like going against the system, being a doctor with your own practice, not bending the knee to big pharma and issuing that the way that they would have you? What would that be like? But then you hit on even bigger things. I should almost stop and start taking notes, but I mean, they assassinated your husband. I think that bears unpacking a little bit so people can understand what happens to those who threaten their realm, their money machine, and in any sector, but big pharma is a big one. And also, this woman, the culling, I want to ask you, with her mindset, were you able to ascertain, was there any religious doctrine or purpose behind that? Because we've found in our investigations that there is, but I understand some people, it may just be all about wealth and power for them, and thinking if they had only a few people to manage, it would be easier globally. But when we've traced it, there is a religious Luciferian cult behind that globally.
Let
But what's been
me
your
let
honest
me answer your
observation?
last question first, because
Okay.
those are very, very profound questions. Um, in my understanding, and nobody has read me into the program of these evil monsters. So I'm just putting the dots together as best I can. Now, our brains are engineered as pattern making organs.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that the patterns are correct just because we make them. Once we make a pattern, we tend to believe in it and assume that it's correct because we believe in it. That's not exactly good science. So I will tell you what I currently believe based on the information and understanding that I've been able to generate when we come back.
Thank you, ma'am. I look forward to that. Stand by, everybody. We will be right back.
Hey, Tim James here. When I was 37 years old, I had some severe gastrointestinal issues. I was tired, fatigued, wasn't feeling good, skin issues. My health was a mess. Let's just put it that way. Now I'm turning 52 this year, and I have abundant energy. I'm able to trail run and kick the butts of my 22 and 24-year-old sons. Yep, that's right. And do push-ups and all this other fun stuff. How did I do it? Well, one key ingredient, if you want to get healthy, if you want to get your energy back, you want to get your vitality back, is real nutrition. Our soils have been so over-farmed, 85% of the nutrition is gone today, and then the rest is processed out through these processing plants. So what we have created is a formula called Green 85 juice formula. You can take 1 scoop in the morning, and we suggest you do another one in the afternoon about a half an hour before dinner, and you will revitalize your health. You will get your health back. You will cut your hunger cravings, and you're going to actually cut your grocery bill in half. This product will literally pay for itself because you cannot eat as much food because your cells are now getting the nutrition they need. Go to chemicalfreebody.com/DOC. That's chemicalfreebody.com/DOC. Get Green 85 today and energize your life and your health so that you can feel as good as I do and Craig does and Forrest. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
We do everything we can to protect our kids. When 1 in 9,800 children drown and 1 in 360 suffer a bike injury, it's only natural to do what we can to prevent anything bad from happening. But did you know that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys is sexually abused before the age of 18? Like wearing a helmet, prevention through education is the most important thing we can do to protect our children. Visit lawrencekids.org to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We are on with Dr. Rima Laibow, and I am wanting to encourage you right now to grab some of our Rescue Roast coffee at our website, v4cr.org. This is fantastically roasted. It's all I drink here at the house, and every time you buy our coffee, all of those proceeds go directly into our operational fund to move men and equipment around the country, arresting the child predators and sparing the children from harm. And that's why we offer that and all the other merch. So thank you for supporting us and drinking that with us. And I hope it blesses you and you stay alert. Oh, and I do, just because I wanted to, I pray over every batch of this. I think through quantum physics, it makes sense to wish well over your food before you ingest it. And spiritually, I think it's a very beautiful and positive thing to do. And I want everybody to be blessed. So that's just something I do with our Rescue Roast coffee. So, Doc, I'm sorry to have had to stop you for that commercial. Please, you were just about to start unpacking the war on children and what all's behind what you've learned. Please continue.
So what I learned so far, and I'm open to correction at any time, of course. But what I understand is that we believe in things like religion, countries, nationalism, ethics, values, morality. These people do not. They see themselves. Now, the nature of a psychopath, by the way, is important here. Speaking as a psychiatrist, a psychopath is a person who lacks completely the human capacity to love. Now, a sociopath does love, but a psychopath has no affiliation with anyone, anything, any chick, child, pith, kin, idea, country, anything except their own perceived well-being, their own perceived interests. They will show you a mask that is a mirror of what you want and what you need and what you believe. So you never see them. But behind that mask, and the more successful they are, the less you ever guess that there's a mask at all. Behind that mask is a human being that is crippled to the extent that they cannot love, they cannot affiliate. Therefore, the things that move us and mean things to us and are important enough for us to die for, our children, our country, our God, mean nothing to them. When people say, oh, it's the Zionists, no, it's not. They don't give a damn about Zionism. They use these constructs. They use religion. They use forms. They use formats. They use countries. They use ideologies, communism, capitalism, whatever. They don't have any affiliation to any of that. And although they may have religious trappings around what they do for ceremonial purposes and whatever, they have neither country nor club nor God, nor any other thing that matters to them. They have only their own perceived self-interest. So it's not about a country, a religion, an ideology, a history, an ethos. It's about their own perceived self-interest. If it's in their self-interest to kill the kid, they'll kill the kid, the grandmother, the wife, the husband. They don't care. They care about nothing that moves us. Now, that makes them invisible to us because normal people have the capacity to love woven so deeply into our beings that we cannot even imagine what it is like to be a human or a partial human because there's such an essential piece missing. They're not aliens. They're not reptilians, as far as I can tell. They're psychopaths. And therefore, they are incredibly dangerous, deceitful, and invisible to us in their full lack. They lack the essential human capacity for love. And without that, they have the capacity to do endless harm through any institution. So no, I don't see them as having a religion or a nation state or an ideology. They have nothing but profound selfishness, which can manifest as massive evil.
Sure.
I must disagree with you in that.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, man. Ask not, learn not, I always say. So, and another question that I have then, how much of this, in your medical opinion, ends up being from childhood trauma? This void, this lack of ability or any desire to have any compassion for anyone else, that complete isolation and that block. Are you able to ascertain?
We don't really understand very much about psychopathy.
Okay.
We don't, but we do understand that you can get there in a couple of different ways. One is you can be tortured, traumatically abused, to the point where your ability to love is extinguished, like a candle being snuffed out. Another way to get there may be a genetic component. If you breed people more and more successful at being a psychopath, it may be that there's a genetic component that is enhanced along with the childhood reinforcement. But we also know that when a mother and baby fail to bond, and by the way, a mother is not a birthing people. There are only two genders, folks. Let's cut out the nonsense. There are two genders. Women have uteri, generally. Men have penises and testicles. Women have ovaries. You know, that's how it goes. Let's not kid ourselves. You can have an adult relationship with whomever you like, you're still either an XX or an XY, and there's the end of it. Anyway, and let's reclaim the language, shall we? They're not birthing people; they're women, for God's sakes. Anyway, women typically are the primary nurturing persons, although that can be men too. But whomever the baby first bonds with changes the developmental trajectory of that baby and of the person that the baby bonded with. By the way, there are neurological consequences, there are receptor changes, hormonal changes, etc., based on the successful bonding of the baby and the mother. Typically, that begins in utero. Typically, let us hope it's a uterus without vaccines. That's another part of the conversation. But the bonding begins in utero. We know that there is, in fact, pre and perinatal activity, psychological, emotional activity between the baby and the mother before the baby is born. And we know that babies hear what's being said. We know that babies respond to the maternal heartbeat. We know that babies respond to the chemicals in the mother's blood that pass through the placenta. We know that babies respond to the mother's emotions, which create chemical fluxes. We know that babies respond to the mother's thoughts. So we know that there is already a ballet. Oh, babies also respond to the mother's respiration sound. The first music of a human being is the music of the fetal heartbeat, doot, 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 the maternal heartbeat, doot, 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 and the maternal respiration, whoosh. Every music in the world and all sacred musics are built on those three rhythms: the fetal heartbeat, the maternal heartbeat, and the maternal respiration. It changes us, it builds us. And in fact, without that, we are not fully human. So these psychopaths, for whatever reason, genetic, environmental, nutritional, to who the hell knows, for whatever reason, they lack this love connection. And without that, they can love no one. Wow. So that's my answer to that question.
Wow. Powerfully answered. I appreciate it. Stay tuned, everybody. We got to cut to a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Are you or a loved one struggling with addiction? Rancho Milagro Recovery is an accredited drug and alcohol addiction recovery program treating the whole person through their lifelong recovery process. Our process incorporates both medication-assisted treatment and psychological therapy to help all aspects of an individual's mind, body, and spirit. Our lavish accommodation sits on 60 acres of outdoor greatness where your privacy and discretion is our utmost concern. Find lasting recovery and walk away from addiction one step at a time. RanchoMilagroRecovery.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We're on, continue our discussion with Dr. Rima Laibow, and what a powerful discussion she is bringing. She knows so much that is really profound and meaningful, and I'm enjoying this conversation. I can see it's not going to be long enough today to contain what I would want everybody to hear from this woman. So much love in her heart. And isn't it interesting that it's those who love the most who have the bold courage to speak truth?
For sure. We'll have to have her back again, Craig. I agree with you.
Yeah. When it's not welcome, so many times there are so many people's power or their narrative or their money being stepped on that people aren't willing to stand up and speak the truth. But those who love enough don't care about all those things. They care about the truth and the people that need the truth. So that's just something that struck me. So Doc, please, you talked about the music. That was so important. I hope musicians pay attention to that. The fetus's fast heartbeat and the slower mother's heartbeat, and that whoosh of the blood flowing through. And man, what if more musicians understood and comprehended the beauty of the original, the first music that we all hear? and
Well,
that dance
interestingly,
between our bodies and our mother's bodies in
exactly,
utero, you know?
exactly. Mac Freeman at Queen's University, Kingston, Ontario, studied this for many years. And one of the things that he did is he went to communities, he and his students, of course, went to communities that were under extreme stress through poverty and through crime and through disruption of all terrible sorts. And in the classrooms where kids weren't learning, where chaos was the rule rather than orderly behavior, they played the fetal maternal duet. They just played the music of the first instance of love, safety, and security in the uterus. They didn't say anything.
Right.
Academic scores rose, disruption in the classroom it was eliminated. The kids were different at home. The communities changed, and they published all of this work. It was magical,
Wow.
absolutely magic. I mean, think about it. Kids who are starving, who don't have shoes, who don't have food, will steal or beg or barter to get whatever is coming through their headphones. And that's more important to them than food, shoes, shelter, whatever, right? Why? Because they're feeding the most basic need, the need for safety, security, and connection that human beings have. That's
Wow.
very interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Indeed.
It is. Well, thank you for sharing that and unpacking it a little bit further. I hope people will continue to research that and benefit from it as well. So, Doc, we agree that there is a war upon the children. And what has been your honest observation and your journey in trying to love people and make the world a better place with your skills and your assets? What have you learned about
Well,
what's happening?
specifically, remember, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and that means that I know more than the average bear about normal and abnormal development, psychosexual, emotional, intellectual, physical development of people into what is laughingly called maturity. And one of the things that we have to look at is MK Ultra and Monarch. And we have to look at these evil, terrible, awful programs that were intentionally designed to figure out how to control people from the most profound levels outward, to make people completely predictable and controllable, to make spies and slaves and sexual objects and operatives and whatever it was that was being made. And what they discovered was the single most successful way to stunt individual capacity and to make people completely controllable, completely unable to break free of any kind of programming that was delivered to them, was repeated sexual trauma. The earlier, the more effective. And what happened is from that vile, terrible research, which went on for much longer than the church committee said it should stop after, which was 1977, if I recall, went on and on and on, and in many ways is still going on. What was discovered, what was realized was that if we traumatize every child in the world from the earliest possible age sexually, if we make everyone in the child's world a predator, including parents, including teachers, aunts, uncles, neighbors, friends, pastors, Boy Scout masters, Girl Scout leaders, everybody becomes a predator or a potential predator, we can stunt the psychosexual development of children. And if we pump a bunch of heavy metals like aluminum and mercury, and we put some heavy plasmids and some nanoparticles and so on into the child's body from before birth by injecting pregnant women, which is an atrocity all unto itself, then what we have is utterly controllable people who are so bemused, confused, deluded, depressed, distracted, and distressed that they can question nothing. They are infinitely controllable. Now, if you want a world of slaves who question nothing, and just ask Klaus Schwab, Yuval Harari, and the people running the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the comprehensive sexuality education, if you want those people developed from earliest childhood, destroy children, and you'll get the totally controllable, unquestioning slave mentality. Call them free, call them anything you like, but they're slaves because they have been enslaved through their own psychosexual destruction. Now, what do I mean by that? The United Nations, which is a death machine, which was created following the Rockefellerian pattern of utter social domination and control, which was created to be the world government, the United Nations has issued guidelines saying that parents should begin masturbating their children at birth to, quote, teach them to be sexual beings. Hint, children are not sexual beings. Children are sensual beings. Children are acutely aware of sensation and enjoy all kinds of sensation. They are not sexual until puberty. However, if you overwhelm them by sexual experiences that they cannot integrate, that are totally traumatic for them, and you keep them coming, you will distort their development irreversibly. The United Nations says, through UNESCO, UNICEF, and the United Nations itself, that sexual partners are a right and that children should have sexual partners as early as possible. Where is this documented? If you go to preventgenocide2030.org and on the top bar, find the drop down to the war on children, the United Nations war on children, you will see the technical guidelines for destroying children, for making everyone a predator. By the age of 6, under these technical guidelines, by the age of this many, before some children can even count confidently higher than that, by the age of 6, a child should be able to fill out a checklist deciding the following things. Do I want to have sex with this person? Excuse me? What did you just say? Do I want to have sex with this person? Do I want to have oral, anal, or genital sex with this person? Right? Do you want your 6-year-old to do that? Well, the 6-year-old is 2 years later than the 4-year-old. Am I over time?
No, we're over time, but we're going to continue right on the other side. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Brushwood Media Network.
Here to review this V4CR coffee, Veterans for Child Rescue. Getting rid of child trafficking all around the world.
Rescue Roast. This is being offered strictly to fund our operations. We found a great roaster, chosen our 3 favorite flavors. And our light, medium, and dark roast, we're offering it right now in pre-ground form. If you want to enjoy it in K-Cups, we have stainless steel cups on our website, and they are reusable. Just take the coffee and pour it into the cup. Close it up, put it in the machine. Oh yeah. So go to our website right now, v4cr.org. Order as much as you want on our shop page. We're grateful for your continued support. We're excited about what this means as far as boosting the funding for our operations. Thank you so much for your continued support. God bless.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We are on with Dr. Rima Laibow, and she is bringing it. Doctor, please continue where you left off. You were talking about the programming of the children through this sexual trauma and what all they want in that child's mind far prior to that child being naturally able to process such a thing?
By the age of 4, the guidelines say, and again, go to preventgenocide2030.org and go to the green bar at the top, and you'll find the drop down that takes you to the UN War on Children. This is a war on children and on childhood. By the age of 4, according to the guidelines, a child should have, you ready? Put your seatbelt on and your crash helmet, should have developed lust. Well, I know a lot about children, and I'm also a mother. I don't want to see a 4-year-old have lust for anything except maybe a piece of birthday cake and some ice cream or a new toy. That's what the child's intention should be given toward, and of course, playing and loving and learning. No, this is sexual lust. A child should have been exposed to so many sexual experiences that that child has now developed lust by the age of 4. By the age of 6, should be engaging in sexual activity. And it's all okay as long as it's choiceful. Well, what does consent mean? What does choice mean? Now we go to the United Nations judicial recommendations, which were issued, I believe, on March 16th of 2023 for every jurist, legislator, and prosecutor and attorney in the world. Because, of course, if we have a one world government, we have a one size fits all everything, a judicial system, a political system, a moral system, a medical system. Everything is the same because they say it is. So in this judicial review, which is also posted at preventgenocide2030.org, because I'm not crazy enough to make this stuff up. And nobody I work with is crazy enough to make this stuff. Everything that I'm saying is documented in their documents. And that's a very important point. I'm not speculating, I'm quoting. So one of the things that it says is that there is no minimum age of consent to anything. So if somebody says to a 2-year-old, I'll give you a piece of candy if you touch me here, and the 2-year-old says, okay, that's considered legal consent. So we're eliminating the protected category, the legally protected category of childhood. We are also eliminating the protected category and the protective category of parent. Parents have no rights. By the way, the mayor of Boston has suggested that, or not suggested, has recommended that children as young as 11 vote in elections and referenda on financial issues, because what 11-year-old doesn't care passionately about the state of potholes in the city of Boston, right? Okay, this is craziness. Now, we are hearing a great deal in the United Nations about young people making decisions. This means giving children the pseudo responsibility of making decisions about complex adult subjects in which children have neither experience nor interest. That's another way of manipulating, but that's a different discussion. Back to sexuality. So we're talking about constantly barraging children. So in the judicial recommendations, the categories such as child predators and pedophiles don't exist, because if anybody consents to anything at any age, under any condition, it's perfectly okay. Not only that, it says child sex work should be decriminalized, along with all other sex work. Wait, child sex work? Excuse me, what does that mean? That means child prostitution? That means child pornography for pay? What, candy? Money? Who knows? That means anything can be agreed to and is therefore acceptable. Now, when you think about the decision-making capacity of children and their ability to forecast the impact of their actions onto the future, you might say, not only limited, but neurologically non-existent yet for young children, right?
Right, yeah, because isn't it that the prefrontal cortex is not even fully developed until the age of 23 to 25?
God willing, 23,
yeah,
25,
well,
but
yeah, many
look at a
people never.
politician and tell me. So absolutely. What we're talking about is
But the vulnerability is what I'm trying to
exactly,
highlight. And
exactly. Think about back when you were a teenager. First of all, you knew everything, and you had been born to remarkably stupid people known as parents, right? Who didn't know anything. Somehow they had grown up incredibly stupid. You also were able to make decisions for yourself for the rest of your life with absolute and utter certainty, which turn out in hindsight to be maybe not so great all the time, right?
I've
Okay.
apologized
And
to my parents about those
right,
years.
everybody should, of course.
Indeed.
But the point that I'm making is that those are normal developmental stages of incapacity, which mature hopefully into something quite different. So if you take children at the age of 6 and ask them if they want to be vaccinated in order to get a slice of pizza and a movie ticket, what do you think the answer is going to be?
Right.
Right? And there are no limits to this destruction of childhood and the removal of parental protections. No sane parent is going to allow these things to happen unless they too have been brainwashed. Brainwashing becomes permanent under these circumstances because the ability to think clearly, discern, question, and do what teenagers are supposed to do, which is revolt against all the conventions that they've been told are normal and so on, forge their own path. All of that is eliminated through early traumatic conditioning. One way to make a psychopath or a sociopath, as you asked before, is through early traumatic conditioning. And this is ceaseless traumatic conditioning so that nobody is a safe haven for a child. Nobody is safe. Everybody has at the child in every way, and there's no protective system in order to destroy the child's ability to say, wait, what? Or worse yet, no. And that is the slave mentality. Then add the toxic brew of contaminated food and the massively more significant toxic brew. By the way, I'm an environmental physician. I understand very well about food toxicity and additives and so on and so on. But if you stack up the toxicity of food to the toxicity of injections of vaccines, and now vaccines are being reformulated as mRNA vaccines. When you consider the damage and destruction that the COVID vaccines have done, quote vaccines, and the fact that we are now in one of the world's most successful genocides in the middle of it, and you add in World Health Organization, which is really the World Holocaust Organization's 500 novel vaccines, plus all the conventional vaccines reformulated as mRNA vaccines. Now you're into heavy duty depopulation, deregulation of every protective system of human beings. You want more information? I suggest you go to preventgenocide2030.org, and I suggest you take the actions there to get out of the United Nations before they succeed in killing every one of us. This is a critical reality. This is not a theoretical proposition. Agenda 2030 is on your doorstep, and it is designed to destroy humanity from the DNA out, children included.
Well, I learned about this working in the intelligence community. I've been trying to warn people about it since 2007. So I want to unpack a little bit more of this from you, Doc, on the other side of this break. For right now, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back with a lot more from Dr. Rima Laibow.
Hey, Tim James here, founder of ChemicalFreeBody.com, also the health coach for Craig Sawyer and Forrest Seeley. And I want to help working class people get their energy back and quit having all these health issues. Here's the problems. The average person is carrying around 6 to 12 pounds of impacted fecal material in your colon. This is not good. Number 2, we have terrible nutrition because the nutrition has been farmed out of our soils and processed out. Plus, processed foods are killing 4,300 people a day. We need good nutrition. Number 3, our gut microbiome's all jacked up from all these toxins and pesticides and stress. We have to balance that. We also have tremendous amounts of inflammation in the body, and we have an overload of toxins from heavy metals, radiation, and pollution. Craig and I and Forrest got together. We created what we call our Defending Our Health bundle. This is a bundle of our products over here at ChemicalFreeBody.com that will revolutionize your health. We've put them together. Green 85 is going to come in and supply you with all the nutrition you need. Our Gut Detox will take care of all that impacted garbage inside of you and keep it out. Toxin Detox will get the heavy metals, the radiation, and the pollution out. The Nano Silver, the triple action, will start balancing the gut microbiome, and the Turmeric 100 will start reducing inflammation in the body. You put it all together, and working class people can now get their energy back and their health back and start to heal themselves. We need you to be healthy so that you can fight for freedom and fight for these kids. Go to chemicalfreebody.com/DOC and check out the Defending Our Health bundle and all of the other wonderful products that we offer, and we look forward to helping you have the best life ever.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We're on with Dr. Rima Laibow. Doc, will you educate me a little bit on what it is about people who nowadays they're very passionate about their stance on any topic, but I find that they're not well informed. And, you know, if you were an expert on building a door for the space shuttle, I wouldn't argue with you too much on that because I'm not an expert on that. And I assume that you would probably have quite a bit more information. I may ask you questions, but I wouldn't shout you down. Where does that come from psychologically? What are we dealing with when we have people? You're talking about Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, which I've been urging people to research along with so many other things. Yuri Bezmenov's lectures on ideological subversion and all of it. People don't know. They don't know. But boy, they'll shout you down. How does that enter our culture? What's happened with people that are that way?
Hey, do you have children?
I do.
Do you remember when your children were 18 months old, 2 years old?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you said something which they found uncongenial?
Of course.
How did they behave?
Temper tantrum.
Like toddlers do. Yep.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
How would you do something like that?
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yeah.
You're bad, Daddy. Okay. Well, if you reduce people to a state of primitive function, and there are many ways to do that, fear is a very good one, because when we are fearful, we revert to earlier states of ego organization, younger states of behavior. Fear's real good. Ever notice that there's a good deal of fear porn circulating around us continually?
Yes, ma'am.
Despair is another very good one. Our society, as a psychiatrist, I will remind anybody who wants to listen of the essential nature of depression. Depression is being trapped in a state of helplessness, hopelessness, and a distortion of time perception so that what is now is always going to be. It's endless. Hopelessness, helplessness, and trapped in this forever. No exit. Our society is being orchestrated, manipulated, and engineered very carefully into a state of personal and cultural depression. We are helpless. There's nothing I can do. Oh, the problems are so big and there's so many. What can I do about climate change? Oh, dear. Hopelessness, helplessness. There's a hopelessness. There's no end to it. It's all terrible. It's all going to end. Oh, Oh, there's nothing I can do. I might as well eat, drink, and be merry and do what's said to be done and just watch TV some more, watch some more reality TV because there's nothing I can do. And it's going to end. The world is going to boil. And this is the way it is forever. Now that we're here, we can only be here. That's depression. When you
Okay.
are depressed, there are two states of action. One is collapse into total inaction, right? I can't get out of bed in the morning. It's all I can do to drag myself to the office and just sit there and stare at the computer screen. And the other is rage. Could be road rage.
Okay.
It could be, how dare you? How dare you threaten my fragile equilibrium, which is bad enough. And I got to go get some more drugs.
Okay.
Also, people who are on drugs, who are on psychiatric drugs or drugs that have psychiatric impact, and there are a lot of those, um, have emotional lability as one of the very, very common side effects, which means my emotional stability can be interrupted and shaken with pretty much not much of anything at all. So you come along and you raise a question, and it spreads cracks through my entire inner world. And the only thing I can defend with is there are two branches to the sympathetic nervous system. There's the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, or flee. And
Mhm.
there's the parasympathetic system, which is stay and play. Every organ in the abdomen, the brain, and all of the organs, the heart, the gut, the bladder, they're all connected directly to the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. You threaten me when I'm in a vulnerable state, I'm going to fight or I'm going to flee. And my brain's involved and my mouth is connected. And so my fight is probably going to be verbal. How dare you? Right?
Right. Okay.
Oh, pretty much the same thing. So we're looking at complex interactions between physiological, neurological, psychological, emotional, and social engineering, all beautifully carried out by people who are completely unconcerned with our well-being, have endless amounts of money because their buddies print more when they run out, and can hire the best brains in the world for ruthless social engineering, moving toward the goal of eventual depopulation of most of the world's population and enslavement of the remaining few. So it's a fairly complex program. Its name, in short, is Agenda 2030, which was created when Agenda 21 was too far behind schedule. And the World Economic Forum signed another formal partnership with the unelected nobodies, or UN, the world government in development, to hurry up and make things happen faster. And so that's our Klaus Schwab baby. There will be, by the year 2030, all human reproduction will take place outside the human body. It's only one of his clever little contributions to society. And fertility is being reduced below replacement levels in every country where the so-called vaccines have been rolled out. Just a coincidence, I suppose. Quite a number of coincidences.
These are very sick people. I think we need to get past the point.
Perhaps.
I think the veil's being torn open right now, the light's being shown upon the darkness and all of the deceit we are seeing now, that we, the American people at least, have been so deeply betrayed and ripped off. And the kleptocracy that has squandered hundreds of billions of dollars, well, many trillions of dollars now, of our tax money. And we're finally finding out what kinds of ridiculous programs those trillions have been poured into. And it is ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. I have to disagree with you. It's very carefully engineered. There is a program beyond common sense, and that program is utter destruction. Think of the United Nations as the Death Star, which has been sent by the Imperium to wipe out life on this planet. Okay? We have no access to the Imperium. We have access to the Death Star. The Death Star has a name that we all know. It's called the United Nations. And the President of the United States has the authority to write a letter with one sentence that says, "Dear Secretary General of the United Nations, the United States is no longer a member of your organization or any of its subsidiary bodies. Very truly yours, President of the United States." That can be done. And right now, we have the opportunity to make that happen as citizens of what supposedly is a free country. Right now, we have a unique opportunity to make that happen.
Well, there are so many things that were so very wrong that have been halted now and illuminated. And I think that's another one that needs to happen. We've only hit the tip of the iceberg. Sharing with people what you would have them know and the solutions that you see that we can all participate in to make the world a safer place for our children and more as it ought to be.
We have exactly, in my estimation, one option, which makes it really easy. And we have a very clear-cut dichotomy. If we fail, humanity is destroyed. If we succeed, humanity has the opportunity to begin the hard work of removing 145 years of intentional destruction from every single structure that supports humanity, from the family, from education, from governance, from medicine, from churches, from from economy, from every single aspect, every single institution, because they've all been penetrated quite intentionally, quite carefully through what I call the Rockefellerian predatory philanthropist cabal. About 145 years ago, when Francis Galton coined the term eugenics, that was in 1883, and people like John D. Rockefeller Sr. and Henry Ford and John Jacob Astor and the Robert Barron, great capitalists of the world, said, "Ooh, that's cool. That's a scientific word for getting rid of people that we don't want to have in our world. And ooh, what else could we do? We could take over the whole world. We have a whole bunch of money, and more money than anybody else." John D. Rockefeller Sr. was the first billionaire the world ever saw, by the way. And we could shape the world the way we want it. How do we want it? And they got together and they talked about it, and they decided what they wanted was a slave society. And we're on the verge of the culmination of their dream. We are their slaves, those of us who are permitted to remain. Our children are their targets, to be their compliant, unresisting, genetically altered, biodigitally converged non-humans. Humanity is slated for absolute and intentional destruction unless we take one single action to open the door to restoration, recovery, and perhaps a great golden age. And that single step is to leave the United Nations. Now, that used to sound like wackadoodle nonsense, right? Remember when Ron Paul was saying, we have to leave the United Nations, and the John Birch Society was saying, we have to leave the United Nations, and all of us reasonably educated people said, oh my, that doesn't make any sense. We need the United Nations, peacekeeping, blah, blah, blah. Nonsense. If you read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the foundational document of the United Nations for governance of the world, there are no rights. Any right can be removed. If you read the Constitution of the United States, we have inalienable rights. They come by virtue of being alive. There are no inalienable rights in the United Nations world. Furthermore, the final article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations says everything everybody does at every level has to be harmonious with the principles and purposes of the United Nations. If it isn't, you lose. So there was an executive order just days ago, by President Trump, one of his more than 300 executive orders, that directs the Secretary of State and the Ambassador to the United Nations to examine every international organization that we are part of, party to, participating in, to see whether they're anti-American. The United Nations is profoundly anti-American, and to see if they're radical. The United Nations is profoundly radical. And oh, by the way, the United Nations was founded as and continues to be a committedly Marxist organization.
I was going to bring that up. Yes, ma'am.
So you have a Marxist organization devoted to the elimination of our constitutionally guaranteed rights. I mean, I would call that anti-American. What do I know? I'm a doctor, not a lawyer, but it looks anti-American to me. And you have the complete history of complicity with terrorist and worse organizations, nation states, actions, etc., through the United Nations destruction of everything that matters. The great cost of money and freedom and truth. They see us as the problem. We are their problem. We are their worst nightmare because we are capable of love. They are not. We are capable of freedom. They are not. We are capable of questioning independently and arising to defend humanity. They do not want us to have those abilities, but we do. So they've conditioned us to believe that we are hopeless, helpless, and trapped in this forever. That's their truth. Our truth is that we are free, we are capable, and we hold the power, and we can exercise it through our Freedom Mouse, PreventGenocide2030.org.
Thank you, Doc. I celebrate you, Dr. Rima. You are a champion for the children and for the people. God bless you and all that you do. For the rest of you folks, join us again next time on Defending Our Children.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Defending Our Children, the show that empowers the people with the information you need to know. Learn more on how to get involved and make a difference at vetsforchildrescue.org, because the children are worthy.